Let's talk about this story. So this is crazy. So we are about to hit a $1 trillion defense budget. Now, you might say, well, no, we're nearing 900 billion. No, we're a hop skip from that. And you may even argue, as we've done on this show before, that the number that we have where it's about 800 billion is already about 100 and so billion beyond that anyway.
Yes.
So,
well, you've done pieces here on the show where you have picked apart sort of the daily military contracts that are handed out in pursuit of things that are connected to our existing military budget. So
right.
The United States government, hands them out like Skittles, these government contracts for military missions.
They just add on.
Those don't necessarily get, put into the streamlined budget.
So Americans are facing right now, let's just run down the list as Santa goes by in the background. Americans are facing a huge spike in layoffs right now. Fuel shortages. So we just got the numbers today on job losses, and it's bad. And we've been predicting this for a while, but now we saw the numbers today, and it's a huge spike, in the biggest spike in 10 months of job losses across the United States, at a time when you're getting all these seasonal employment. You're getting all these seasonal workers that are coming in. Fuel shortages. People who are, freezing in their homes right now because they can't turn up the thermostat because they can't afford to do it. As we've said on the show before, more people die of cold than do heat waves, right? Overwhelmingly. And skyrocketing energy costs all around. Is Congress doing anything to stop it? No, they're not. Nope. Instead, they are about to approve a massive increase to our war budget, pushing us closer and closer to $1 trillion. And if you need any more examples just of how corrupt these guys are, take a look at this. This is from Politico. This is their headline. House Senate negotiators agree to add $45 billion to Biden's defense budget. So just let's unpack that a second, okay? The House and Senate have agreed to increase the 2023 Defense Authorization Act by another $45 billion beyond what the Biden administration just requested.
Why not?
Like, we're going to just sweeten the deal for you. We're just going to throw in an additional $45 billion on top of this.
This happened last year. I think it was in the 30s.
Yeah, it was.
But
they do it all the time now.
Why not a little more? You under-asked. I love when that happens. Bank error in your favor.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the $45 billion increase was agreed on by the House and Senate Armed Services Committee, but other details of the NDAA are still being finalized. The increase would have the two panels agree on, would bring the total budget to $847 billion. $847 billion. Just wrap your head around that. More than all of the major militaries of the world. I mean, Russia's annual military budget is in like the 70s or 80s. Mm-hmm. Think about China's military budget,
which is larger than ours by personnel.
Yeah. So they have more personnel in their military than we do. And yet we pay about 6 or 7 times the amount of China. And all of the industrialized world.
Not to people, though. Not to soldiers.
Oh, no, we don't pay it to soldiers.
We invest in it, but this doesn't necessarily go into soldiers. So this budget usually does, since we haven't seen the final line items yet, but these budgets usually do include pay raises for the military. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, because as inflation just sort of rolls out of control. And a lot of times when the military move overseas, they have spouses who can't work in those places. So it's a tough deal for them.
So, and we're going to hear more about the soldier angle and all of this, about how this relates to the vaccine mandates, because you're getting some Republicans that are now saying, wait a second, this is an opportunity for us to end vaccine mandates for the military. And we're going to tie this in, so we won't pass this budget, this military budget, unless we can end the vaccine mandates for our military men and women, which should have been done a long time ago. So we'll hear about that in a second. But first, take a look at this, Philip. I don't know if you have my laptop here. Yeah. So this was the Deal Book Summit. This is New York Times. So the New York Times yesterday, about a month ago, we heard that they were going to have a panel, this Deal Book Summit, hosted by Andrew Ross Sorkin. He was there. Vladimir Zelensky was going to be in attendance. Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX fame, Janet Yellen. I mean, it's like a who's who of criminals, basically, like on stage at this Deal Book Summit. Hey, who can we get at the New York Times to bring in, right? So Zelensky, we'll get him to bring in. And so the New York Times does this interview with him yesterday about, and he asks him specifically about the budget, the United States military budget. And, we've spent over $105 billion in Ukraine. How do you justify that amount of money? Don't you think, is that a little too much? How do you justify that? Watch Andrew Ross Sorkin and Volodymyr Zelensky on that question.
November 15th, the Biden administration submitted a new aid request of $37.7 billion, which, if passed, would bring the total amount that the U.S. Has provided in assistance to $105.5 billion. We're going to be speaking with former Vice President Mike Pence a little bit later, and there has been a sentiment among Republicans who now control the House in the United States from Kevin McCarthy, who said there should not be a blank check. What do you tell them?
We are absolutely open, and we are thankful for the assistance. It's not quite correct to speak about 100 billion as a value of the war for the United States. The value is lives of people. If Ukraine does not stand through this war, the war will spread into other territories and maybe even to other continents. Our people is the biggest value. Tell me how much our people cost. I don't know.
Okay. How much our people cost? What is that? I'm sorry, explain. How much do our people cost? How much do the people in the West cost? How much do the people in the EU cost? How much do the people in the United States cost? You spent $847 billion and then another $100 billion to kill all of those people in Ukraine. Never mind the fact these people are being killed. This isn't like we're helping them in any appreciable way. They are being decimated.
Yes. I mean, if this was a budgetary number saying this is the price of peace, then we could all say, okay, spend it. We'll make it up later.
Yeah,
this is not the price of peace. This is the price to continue killing.
Right. So we're using their...
They have an opportunity to sit at a peace table today, yesterday, and tomorrow. That opportunity stands to say, no more killing. This stops now. They won't take it. And so, it's interesting that this figure comes out at the same time this week that Politico published a story about EU officials accusing the United States of profiteering from war. And so then when you look at this budget of $847 billion, you can sort of start to see how government officials feel like that is an investment. Because there's money to be made there. It's not a sunk cost. It's not like we do it because we value freedom and protection and that kind of thing.
Right.
They see it as an investment, not only to boost the United States PR around the world, but also absolutely for profiteering.
So, you think about
did they happen to mention what because you said we have almost $1 trillion war budget. What was our peace budget? I don't remember if you said that or not.
And I refuse. Here's the thing. I refuse to call it our defense budget. They call it a defense budget. It's not a defense budget.
Well, did you know that the Department of Defense was originally called in Washington days, the Department of War?
Yeah.
It's just,
it's just a name.
It was just a name change.
Of course.
It remains the Department of War.
Right. Yeah. So they changed it.
Because no one's coming here.
Do you know someone brought up the idea of a Department of Peace? I don't remember which member who was running for president, and they were laughed at. They were laughed at and mocked for saying we should have a Department of Peace instead of a Department of Defense.
Yeah.
And they were mocked openly. Unbelievable. So, Americans are suffering right now. They can't pay their heating bills, the same across Europe, but we're going to send money to Ukraine to make sure that they have heat and that their infrastructure, by the way, we still have never passed an infrastructure bill in the United States. Whatever happened to Build Back Better? Instead, we passed an Inflation Reduction Act, which was just a big wet kiss for, renewables companies. So did we do anything on infrastructure? Did we help anybody? No, we didn't. But we are, listen to Anthony Blinken, sending millions now to Ukraine to help them with their heating and electrical infrastructure. Watch.
I announced that the United States will commit over $53 million to send equipment to help stabilize Ukraine's energy grid and keep Ukraine's power and electricity running. We've also submitted a request to Congress for $1.1 billion to secure Ukraine and Moldova's energy sector and restore their energy supply.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we're going to take care of them. So one big piece of all of this is the military and their vaccine mandates. So this is an interesting sort of wrench in the works right now from Republicans. Well, Ted Cruz, who likes to be an opportunist whenever he can. So he now really cares. Suddenly, they really, really care about the vaccine mandates for our men and women in the armed forces, who, by the way, we've done multiple stories here on the show about all sorts of problems that these individuals have had as a result of it. I mean, and we have an interview that's going to be coming out on our Locals exclusive and on Rumble with John Bowes, who's an Air Force pilot, who is part of this lawsuit about vaccine mandates for the men and women in the military. So here is Ted Cruz now standing up. We're going to use this piece to stop the war budget if we don't get rid of these mandates. Listen.
Our obligation is to defend the fighting men and women of the military. And so I'm standing with my colleagues. I believe we will have 41 Republicans who say, we will not vote to take up the NDAA unless this body votes on protecting the servicemen and women. In May of this year, I introduced legislation, the Americans Act, that would prohibit the Biden administration from terminating or taking adverse action against any serviceman or woman because of his or her decision not to take the vaccine. It would also provide an avenue for people who have been dismissed to be reinstated if they choose to be reinstated in the military.
The Americans Act, he calls it. That's original. I was shocked that one's not already taken.
The Americans Act.
Like,
right.
What do you mean, for the show? I'm
looking for names, and the helping our men and women in armed helping our men and women in the military act. Well, that's available? Wow, I can't believe no one ever came up with that before. So John Mearsheimer, we featured John Mearsheimer here on the show. He's been really an outspoken critic of this war. He's been a real thoughtful academic on this question about war and our U.S. involvement in this war. He did an interview on Unheard. I'm not going to play any of it right now, but he did talk about how with John Mearsheimer basically was asked about the realistic options for a potential diplomatic settlement to the Ukraine war. And he said there are no options. He said we're screwed, that the West is playing Russian roulette, basically, and that we are screwed as a result of this fool's errand inside of Ukraine right now. And sending all of this money there. They just continue to see as an opportunity to make as much money as they can, the military-industrial complex, and there is no turning off of the spigot. I'm just curious about this sort of Ted Cruz Republican game with vaccine mandates for the military, though, because in the end they're going to fold on this point.
You think Congress will fold?
They're pushing for more money than Biden asked for. And so they are going to try to use this as some sort of a cudgel against who? I don't know. The military-industrial complex is going to be upset about this if they don't see this budget coming through. They're going to say this is going to hinder our war effort. And I think most Americans would say, great. I think a majority. How many people watching right now would be absolutely happy about the idea of them not spending this money, not being able to funnel billions of dollars to all of these war contractors, and they would be screwed? I would be perfectly fine with that. I would be absolutely fine with that.
If the war contractors would be screwed.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what they're saying.
Oh, like
what
they would go out of business.
Because the argument is, well, you're screwing with our readiness. You're screwing with our readiness and our preparedness. For what? What threat are we facing right? Guys on camels in Afghanistan? No.
I don't know, especially when we're told that we've all but depleted our stores by sending them to Ukraine.
The only threat we create is because we go into other countries and invade those countries.
Right.
That's when we have retaliation. So here's an idea. Don't do that, and then we won't need to spend a friggin' $1 trillion on a war budget. There's an idea for you.
Yeah.
But that's never going to happen.
It just, when you see these numbers, it doesn't go far from your head when you write your taxes and when you write your tax bills and you see your taxes coming out of your paycheck and you're like, there you go.
Yeah. No, this is exactly what they want.